start.
One, two, three, four. So, okay, welcome. I'm Professor Huhtamo, one of the professors at the Department of Design Media Arts here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to attend our fall lecture series, which takes place now for the very first time in this new building. And the topic for this lecture series, as you probably already know, this time deals with Japanese media culture, so media bunka, which actually translates somehow like media culture, is the topic. So during this fall, on this Monday evenings, we will have altogether 5 lectures that look at issues which somehow have to do with Japan, Japanese creativity at the moment, from a number of different perspectives. So we have some really distinguished Japanese guests participating, and also we have some American specialists who provide for us the sort of like the, so we say, the foreigner's perspective on these issues. This lecture series has been organized by the Department of Design Media Arts and curated by myself and our visiting professor from Japan, Machiko Kusahara. And now, so that we wouldn't keep our guest, Hiroshi Ishii, for longer, let me pass on the microphone for Machiko Kusahara, who wants to say just a few words about Hiroshi Ishii as an introduction.
Okay. So thank you for coming. And today, so we have Hiroshi Ishii, internationally celebrated, very, very well-known figure. And he will talk about himself. But so one thing that I want to say is he is known to that he has brought a new idea in human interface. And what he has done is highly appreciated, both from information science and engineering field, and from art field as well. And his works have been shown, exhibited in art venues internationally. So, welcome.
And let me still mention, so Hiroshi Ishii is a professor at MIT, very famous MIT Media Lab in Boston, and he is the founder and the director of the Tangible Media Group. So help us welcome Hiroshi Ishii.
Thank you. Thanks for this great opportunity to talk at UCLA. I visited UCLA, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm really excited about really great atmosphere of interdisciplinary research, not only design and art, but also architecture. Also, I visited the archaeology department because a lot of strong interest about archaeology. Architecture is for future, positive space. Archaeology is time trip to the past, digging ground. But also, to get some information, you have to destroy some information. There's a certain dilemma, which also artists feel quite interesting. So, although the theme is something to Japanese media, my talk has nothing to do with Japan. Although my nationality is Japan, my work is done at MIT Media Laboratory with a bunch of the students who came from all around the world. But there might be some kind of influence on my route as a Japan. But basically today I'd like to introduce the research that my group has been doing, try to blur the boundary of the disciplines. How many of you are the artists? Good. How many of you are the designers? Graphics designer? Interaction designer? Good. How many of you are the media artists? Oh, that's good. So how many of the architects, urban planner, landscape design? Not so much. It's too bad. You guys have a research strong architecture department. How many of you are computer scientists? Oh, good. Hardcore. Electronic engineering. Good. Only one. Mechanical engineering. No? That's an issue. How about archaeology? No? I think one of the things is, if you really want to do something radically new, you really cannot do that kind of stuff in the existing established discipline, because you have to really cover a lot of different aspects. So hope you may think that being asked who you are, answering I'm an artist or designer, could be very dangerous. That could be one possible message I want to send through today's talk. So actually, when I gave a talk a few years ago, how many of you are here? Oh my gosh. Sleep or forget first part. The latter half, you have a lot of new stuff. Yeah. So I'd like to start this slide. Basically, visual is very powerful if you are passively absorbing the information sitting on the couch. But if you are a person to express, create, or edit, you have to really use the body. You have to manipulate, structure the information. So the theme is about the border. This is a border between the sea and land. It's a simple line in the landscape. But it's also interesting locale for the creatures who are trying to survive in this intertidal zone. It's a very harsh environment for the heat and dryness, and also it's pounding waters. But also it's a very fertile environment, so that in this zone, many creatures show very creative evolutions in the past history. And also our ancestors came from the sea crossing this boundary many, many years ago. So now we're crossing the boundary. So the challenge, how to make the interface, this boundary, is a main theme that many people working in field like augmented reality or pervasive computing, or also art and design. And we are living on the border between this digital and the physical, but unfortunately this interface is poorly designed. So you are really losing a sense of your body and also the places in the flood of the pixels coming from a bunch of the computer screen made of Sony or Sharp or whoever. But also pixels really impoverish human senses, because you are not only be here to just seeing, absorbing the information, but you have to express and create. So I'd like to start talking about my old computers. How many of you can compute using this stuff, abacus? It looks like interesting. How many of you learned using abacus in the school? Are you Chinese or Japanese, or maybe? It's good. So key point. First of all the digits, informations are physical, so that you can directly touch and feel, manipulate. This is very important. If you see current computer, all the pixels are intangible. You have to use a remote control like a mouse or keyboard or, you cannot directly feel or touch or smell or taste. But here you can directly touch. Second, affordance. If you grab this object, it becomes very clear that you can use as a musical instrument, toy train, and back scratcher. And you do not need to read any manual written by the engineer or scientist, because it's very obvious. It's called affordance. How to bring back this transparency or clarity of the interface to the digital black box is one of the challenges that I'm trying to tackle. So let me introduce Malcolm Marker's work. By pointing, by pushing and pulling, by picking tools, hands act as conduits through which we extend our will to the world. They serve also as a conduit in the other directions. Hands bring us knowledge of the world. Hands feel, they probe, they practice. Unfortunately, the hand is really underemployed, because basically visual is so powerful to absorb the information. But you have only the very kind of local remote controller which really limit your way to express or control or manipulate. So I'd like to show a certain challenge to change the balance between input and output, or eyes and hands, through the new interaction design that my group has been doing in several years. This is another example of the kind of artifacts. Understanding digital is very important, but not just appreciating too much. It's also good to go to the Museum of Historic Scientific Instruments, so you can learn what kind of stuff are abandoned by being replaced by digital computers made of the plastic. There are a lot of beautiful artifacts, special artifacts designed using very high craftsmanship, aesthetics, and being grabbed in the hand of the expert. That becomes an extension of the minds and hands to measure the world, or predict the movement of the stars, or measuring the passage of time. So this is not kind of the nostalgia, but there must be some way to rejoin the richness and the aesthetics of these handheld artifacts and digital computation. That is another motivation. I often go to the Museum of Historic Scientific Instruments to understand the implication of being digital. So Tangible design interface is a new stream that we are working very hard in the ACM CKI community, and also a bit of CF. But the idea is very simple. Let's give a physical form to digital information or computation so that computation can be directly manipulated. That's it. So like this abacus. But this abacus is just a metaphorical idea using this abacus. There's no digital connections. But I'd like to show how digitals may empower this kind of the artifacts that you can manipulate directly. There are several spectrum. If this physically embodied computation is ambient, that you cannot really touch or feel ambulatory, then it becomes kind of kinetic sculptures, which are called ambient medias. One of the reasons we do ambient media is current computers really requires your very foreground attentions to pass all the pixels on the computer screen. But your visual attention in foreground has kind of severe limitations. You cannot attend many more things, more than like 3 or 4. But you can feel a variety of the things in the natures, like wind, smell, or sound. So if you walk around the forest, you're really absorbing and digesting a lot of the information as a background or peripheral senses. How to utilize these peripheral senses is one of my interests. And we've been working several design exercises. One of the metaphors is the wind. So you can imagine the wind of the bits is blowing through the architectural space, then spinning these pinwheels. And the original ideas was a solar wind, which was very much interesting because solar wind shows activity of the corners of the sun. But in the United States, none of the sponsors show interest in solar wind. So now they're spinning in the wind of NASDAQ and Dow Jones Stock Exchange volume, which means a lot for our sponsors. But you can also apply this idea for like attack of service denial, which send a lot of the unusual packet to the Unix machine. So if pinwheels start spinning in a very crazy manner, that means something going wrong in terms of packet traffic. It could be the attack for the Unix machine, which actually we lost. We are compromised several machines. So these are ways to put the information as a background or peripheries of your perception so that you can feel, but you don't need to really focus, spend your valuable resource of foreground attention unless something unusual happens. This is a bit more tiny bits of the range of the bits. The work is called water lamp, and basically if somebody visits your home in the cyberspace, that becomes tiny bit of the rain, which make water ripples on the ceiling. It could be the hard parts of your significant other living in Europe, for example. So these are design exercises to explore the threshold of the consciousness or subconsciousness, but it's quite tough to control at that threshold because of the learning effect and also variety of the ambient noise. But these are one of the exercises. But we are more interested about bringing physically embodied information, not ambulatory, but manipulatory, where you can reach in the body space so that you can directly touch and feel and manipulate. This is an exercise to explore the new forms of the telepresence using a sense of touch. So to explore the concept of tangible telepresence, we devised the key idea, engineering idea, to synchronize distributed physical object over distance so that you can create an illusion as if you can touching the same object over distance. So you see the 3 roller devices, and these pairs are synchronized very strictly, and they are connected by computational spring. So if you touch the other device, you really feel the invisible hand or ghostly presence of your remote partners, and you can really communicate using a sense of touch. You have so much nerves on your hands, so that you can really experience subtle nuance and feel. Also important thing, you can send signal while you are receiving signal. This is a unique modality, unique feature of this modality of sense of touch. The visual, you have to kind of see. When you speak, but you listen here. But the touch is kind of unique so that you can do completely simultaneously. So one of the kind of idea we are very much interested in is, for example, notion of telepresence. Telepresence, especially in the telecommunication industry, has a kind of goal to make an illusion as if all the people are in the same room, like this one. And that's the most ideal kind of status. But I argued that maybe even people are in the same room, boring meetings, boring, unproductive discussions, unproductive. it doesn't really solve this kind of real issues. So rather than spending so much money for the super realistic imitation of the vision and also auditory cues, why don't we provide more subtle kind of sign of the presence by moving object? Usually object doesn't move because of friction and the gravity, but if move, that scares me. And if start moving by certain pattern, I can't stop believing there's some kind of poltergeist or spirits or ghosts moving that. With a very clear sound, that convey much more strong sense of the presence. So this is a kind of question, how to represent the body without representing the body. So that's kind of the exploration that we are interested in to pursue. The most important thing is technical idea to synchronizing physical object is very powerful. So you can either apply to variety of dimension, like a remote collaboration. Here you see the one tables, the guys moving this kind of architectural models, but this is also synchronized over distance so that you can really have kind of a computer-supported cooperative work over distance, talking about this kind of stuff. Later I'd like to show more advanced technology. Carnibot is another example that the Phil Fry invented, and this is an educational robot. You can really grab and teach how to dance, then record and repeats again and again. So this become kind of physically embodied turtle graphics of the logo language that the Seymour Papert invented. It's very good to explore the differential geometry, but also it's become very powerful media for storytelling, so that the kids can really explore a variety of the story. And one of the key ideas, it's not just anymore the dry pixels on a computer screen. It's really physical stuff, a bit like a Tamagotchi. You really feel kind of the body is syntonic by teaching how to dance, then seeing these small toys dancing again and again until battery dies. And also you can really develop intuition for a very high level concept, like a loop of the computer programming. So you can tell the turtle graph in logo to go 10 centimeter to north, turn 90 degree, repeat 4 times, make this turtle draw square. But you can explore, understand this kind of concept without using any symbolic language at the age of 3, for example. So this is another direction to use this kind of work to the educations. So here you see some kind of the commonality of this project. So coincidence of input space and out space is one of the important feature of extreme tangible user interface, or kind of ultimate, kind of pure TUI. Like Abacus. Abacus, these are input controllers, but also display source, also memory and computation engine. Everything is in it. There aren't any boundary or border or separations. But to make physical object represent information, you have to actuate it. And actuation costs a lot from engineering point of view, also battery, all the stuff. So you have to think about nice balance of the combination of tangible and also intangible representation, which I'd like to talk later using more examples. So, how many are computer scientists? Oh my gosh, we need more computer scientists. Okay. Important point is, I need to bit formalize. I believe many of you know the graphical user interface and also object-oriented programming. How many of you has the name Smalltalk 80? That's a very powerful object-oriented language in the history. Okay. And the Smalltalk 80, the inventor came up with the idea of the model view controllers. So I modified that idea. So basically there's an information or computational entity. So these are representation on the computer screen. Usually this is intangible because it's a pixel or sound. This is a controller that you can grab. But this is a very generic remote controller. You can do one thing at a time. You cannot do many things simultaneously. This is the current part of the GUI. And I was not happy about this GUI because GUI is so good, so powerful. So most of the researchers stopped thinking about any alternative, just started an incremental kind of improvement, which annoyed me because if you do the research, you get to ask for challenge. So these are tangible bits, ideas. It's very simple, giving a tangible physical representations, but making certain portion of representation tangible, that automatically also become manipulable, become controller. So here's a point that the representation control's boundary is blurred. However, tangible representation like an InTouch or Carnibot is very limited. What you can move is very kind of limited. You cannot change the color or form or materials on the fly using wireless communication today because the molecule or atoms are very rigid. So that we also combine intangible representation, which could be the video projection on top of this kind of physical object, which I'd like to show in following sessions. Also, there are some interesting variation, like constructive assemblies.
Triangles allow the
exploration of
digital information
spaces
through a generic tangible interface. The system's triangular tiles connect to one another both physically and digitally with robust hinging magnetic connectors. The connectors offer tactile feedback of connections and disconnections and allow 2D tilings and 3D shapes to be built. A host computer can tell which edges of each triangle are touching and can thus keep track of the topography of the entire system. As triangles are added or removed, the system responds in real time, triggering events and executing commands in digital space based on the user's manipulation of the physical elements. The triangle system is a foundation platform that can be used for a wide range of applications. In this example, images applied to the triangles correspond to characters, places, and events in a nonlinear narrative. A user can explore and affect the progression of the story by connecting the edges and completing the images. Here, the story is told through a series of web pages, which are called in response to the user's actions. The tangible nature of the triangles makes it easy to quickly scan through, sort, and rearrange the relationships between the digital elements that the triangles represent. Because many triangles elements can be manipulated at once, the triangle system encourages multi-user participation. Here, children are selecting and arranging triangles to choose digital audio samples. The physical persistence and ease of manipulation of the triangles suggests a user interaction that is exploratory and creative. The triangles were used in an art installation to let participants explore the implicit interconnected images, allowing users to select and assemble a with evocative images and attach their own audio sample to that grouping.
Some of you may know.
If their particular was reattached to the system later on, the information was instantly retrieved and played back. The triangle system offers a new kind of human-computer interaction by making the topography of digital elements tangible.
How many of you played with Lego bricks when you were kids? Good. I couldn't have a chance to play because my family couldn't afford it, but it's great. It's a brand of building blocks. Like Lego is very powerful to understand the space or construct, and also like a Mindstorm is quite interesting kind of inventions. But you can imagine that all these bricks can talk to each other. The complete topology can be known to the computer, so that now you face with a great challenge. These brick kind of triangles are kind of alphabet waiting for the invention of the new grammar or language. So you, as a designer or artist, can give a new meaning or new kind of rules. When I gave a talk in Stanford University, one of the students who were learning the biology was so excited because she thought this is a great way to teach Mendel's law about the inheritance of all the genes. So you can really invent new grammars, and that's interesting kind of challenge. And also, there are a lot of the precursor of this kind of the work of the constructive assembly. Mainly people use a cube, putting cube together. Also in the art domain, like a SIGGRAPH or Ars Technica, we see several kind of pieces putting together, then all the bits start kind of flowing around. But there might be interesting challenge of the grammar or language, because there's certain physical constraint, but how to make digital grammar flexible is an interesting open kind of space. So today, I'd like to focus on the workbench. That is kind of the emerging kind of focus of my group in the past several years. We're very much interested about designing the table, workbench, which really empowers a group of the designer or students like you guys, or artists, or engineers, or managers to do variety of analysis or decision making, or design, or creations through the interactions. This started from the Metadesk project, which is kind of old one, which Brick Arma and I did 1996. This is kind of early kind of exploration, but you see the right bottom side, you see the MIT Dome icon. This is a physical icon which contains the information about MIT, and you can bring on the table. Then all the information, geographic information, start appearing into the table. But also that becomes a controllers. Having two building model, you can scale or rotate. But this is a kind of toy application which doesn't solve any profound problems. So later, John DeCoffra, he's a first PhD student who invented the idea of the I/O bar. This is a very powerful concept. In short, I/O bar is the evolution of the Edison's light bulb. Edison's light bulb is 1 by 1 pixel low resolution video projector. And John's I/O bulb is high resolution, but photon travels bidirectionally, collects the photons, interpret, then compute digital light and shadow, then project it back to the architectural space, so that you can give new meaning to the architectural surfaces. So this is an example called urban planning. Let me show the
URP is
video.
our most complex, comprehensive application to date, and is again intended for professional use, this time in the field of architecture and urban planning. URP employs wireframe architectural models as the focus of a number
So
of
this is a
integrated
tangible
simulations,
representation,
including the generation of
physically
accurate shadows.
embodied model. Here
These
you see the
projective
shadow.
shadows are carefully
This is
aligned with
intangible
permanently affixed to the basis of the
augmentation
architectural
of this
structure.
model. So now you see tangible
Kind of
and
inverse clock
intangible
can be placed
work
arbitrarily
together,
within the workspace and
then
adjusted to
providing
control the
coherent
simulation's
space.
current
You don't
diurnal
feel
plan,
that boundary.
in turn controlling the sun's
Let's say there's a
position in the sky.
boundary.
Here, our west-pointing 8 o'clock shadows shrink
Clock is
markedly
not
at
anymore
noon,
display.
and eventually swing
It's
around
also
to the
the
east
input
as the
device,
time approaches
controllers.
sunset.
You can change the
Facility can be
position
applied
of the
to shadow
virtual
study.
sun
In
so
this
that you
case, an
can
architect or
control
urban planner
the
responsible for the new structure on the right must
time
worry
of
that
the
it may
day
occlude the
and
existing
according
west building's
to
morning
shadows.
sunlight, which indeed it does in this position. But experimenting with possible solutions simply means grabbing a building and trying out a new location or orientation. A 4-lane roadway with simulated Boston traffic provides the
So
context
important
of
point
its
is
function.
architects
A material
from
wand can be used to change
like
the surface
Egypt
of any
or
building from
Mesopotamia,
brick to glass.
they have
After
using
which
all the
building
physical
produces not
models,
only
like
shadows, but
stones
also
or
solar
clay,
reflection,
to
accurate at any
understand
particular
the
time and
space
structural
and
orientation.
using the kinesthesias.
These simulated reflections
Digital
behavior is
technology
quite
often force
unintuitive.
people
It can be
abandon
the
these
designer
old
checking
media,
for
jump
hazardous
into the computer
situations
screen.
in which
But you
low-angled late
completely lose
afternoon or early
tactility
morning sunlight
or
is reflected directly
tangibility
into
or
oncoming
immediacy of the
But
medium,
subtle changes
which
in
could
building
be
orientation
fatal.
can often make the difference
So,
between an unacceptable design and a
Our
safe one.
approach is to understand the importance of these physical representations and manipulations in a
Measuring tool is
collaborative
used to connect
setting,
together structures.
then try to
Built on a
augment
freeway
them
or two
rather
buildings,
than
so
forcing
that the
them
closest
jump into the
distance between
computer
them is
screen.
constantly displayed
And
as it
hope
evolves.
you see that
This
the
information may
uniqueness
also
of this
trigger alarm
approach, which is
conditions
very
when
different
work
from a
simulations have
GUI-based
specific knowledge
CAD.
about, for example, local zoning regulations that prohibit the
We are fortunate that the
building
media
closer
is
to a
part of
certain
the
distance
School of the
from high-speed
Architectures.
traffic.
One of the reasons I asked how many of the architects are here is you really need to have some context of the work task to solve the real world problems. Art or design cannot stand by itself. Design has to really solve like problems in a developing country, for
Finally,
example, like
a wind
water
tool can be
pollution.
placed into the
Or
workspace
art
to
have to really
engage
address
in
certain
FAQ
issue
lattice gas
of historical
using
science,
applications.
cultural, for example,
Here, the
issue
tool
in
allows the
certain
urban
context.
experimenter to
Always
investigate the
having kind of
effects of
strong
various
context
urban arrangements
make a
on
big
wind
difference.
flow.
So this is a fluid
Any building
dynamics.
located in the
Navier-Stokes
path gives rise
equation
to complicated and more
is
locally
being
variable airflow patterns.
solved. But while you move the
Structured air vector
buildings,
field provides
always
a good
that
qualitative
change
impression of
the
overall
state of the
appearance, but an
computations.
anemometer-like probe tool can also be
Important thing is
secured
all
in
these
instantaneous
computations
wind
were
speed.
available
Particular
through the computers before this app.
The probe's
But
numbers eventually float off.
You
to show
you
the
really don't need to
airborne
go to
depths or
computer
leaps
using a
with
3D mouse or menu. You can just move the building as kids move in moving the building block so that you can explore what happens if the building is far away from that building,
Rotating
how
the
wind
original wind
may
generating
flow
tool changes
differently.
the direction from
The
which the
important
flow
thing is you
originates.
can do the balance of what if analysis also simultaneously
Here we
using
get wind
several
from the northeast.
hands. It doesn't limit for the single users. So hope you get the basic ideas of the difference from tangible user interface and GUI. But also the reason he got a PhD is not only these applications, comparing applications, but also high-level concepts. IO bulb is very powerful to think
Our final
about
application
future
is a
of the
distributed version
architectural
of the initial
space.
illuminating light system, and is the first step toward building an entire luminous room, in which every room surface is capable of display and interaction.
The point is the
Here, a laser
scale.
model is pointed so that its beam shines off the workspace surface, but a second surface picks up the beam, giving rise to an expanded available workspace.
There are two IO bulbs shining to the two
As you can see, our
different
intrepid optical
tables.
engineers are collaborating to build a much larger hologram recording setup. Now, ordinarily, we directly abut the two workspaces to simply produce a single larger environment. But for the purposes of demonstration, this disjoint approach with the tables separated is a bit more dramatic and illustrative.
So when you are speaking, so please turn
Okay, okay.
the sound from the...
Okay, I got it.
When the recording setup is complete, the familiar simulation rendering appears and is separately presented to each experimenter.
So this application is a holographic workbench because John used to be the holographer before he joined my group. So the point is, maybe UCLA may have 10,000 or 20,000 light bulbs in the whole building, but if you change all these light bulbs into the IO bulb, then you have a great design challenge to give a digital meaning onto all these surface or floor or wall or ceiling. So that is very new way. Architects often think just putting where they should video projector or solid neutron monitor. But that's not the way to bring a digital into the architectural space or context. So this is have a tremendous impact in the architectural communities, so that we continue in this kind of discussion. So to summarize, one of the another important point is how to combine tangible and intangible to complement the limitation or rigidity of the atoms is one of the lessons. And we've been using this app for 3 years in the School of Architecture for the urban planning design studio, and we learned a lot of the lessons from this studio. And that's another important thing. Unless you bring your staff to out of your design studio, they actually use for others, you really don't learn almost anything. And of course, sometimes you have a lot of the painful lessons because users are very demanding and asking so many functions. So to summarize the point, Bill Mitchell often stress the importance of the multiple representations. Architects think the design using a variety of the scale of the 2D sketches or drawing or map or photograph, but also they have to make a physical model, and also they have to do the computations analysis. The problem is usually drawings are on the wall and the physical model is on the tables, and the computational simulation is of course inside the computer screen. They are spatially segregated each other. But here you see they are overlaid, multi-layered in the same scale. So that she's now explains the rationale of one of the decision of the design of the landscape. She wanted people to enjoy the lunch in a public space, even October or end of the November, so that she wanted to adjust the height of the building. So this kind of the design decision needs a lot of the factors into the one place. If representation or tools are separated from each other, you cannot really make this kind of the discussion or decision. And they love the critique and discussion, but having tangible representation that we can point or try out in front of all the peoples makes the design dialogues much richer, much more kind of fruitful, rather than remembering and restating using the language. So hope you get the idea that how this kind of technology on the workbench may empower the group of designer or researcher. After that, we made a several important jump. One is, from engineering point of view, we really wanted to make a very stable technology to tracking a bunch of the objects, but also interesting to jump to the abstract application domain, that is system dynamics, which I'd like to show now. First of all, original systems were using computer vision tracking, putting as optical tag, but that is very kind of unstable and slow. So we wanted to design the, that's strange. Okay, let me try. Okay, let's keep. So basically, we're very much interested to develop a new tracking platform that can tell computers what object on top of the table and where it is and which orientation it is. And we made James patterns, and many people developed several generations. But now here you see the 4 packs, and the locations and the orientations are tracked so that you can play with these simple kind of the curves of the lines. And using this, we challenge to support very abstract application like a system dynamics. How many of you know system dynamics? Okay. Let's start from the music first. Okay. James is also interested about the music, and the music is not kind of special application, it's not kind of models, but he designed the new language working with Ben Licht. He's a real musician, and develops variety of the controls. One of the complaints that they have is listen to computer music is controlled by the computers. If you go to the performance, all the musicians are just clicking or typing. That is very boring because they don't use the body, they don't need the kinesthesias. If people play the more classical musical instruments or trumpet or whatever, you see the whole bodies and interacting with the musical instruments. So we're interested about to making a more tangible and participatory music kind of the performance interface. That is the audio part using sense table. And there are several kind of the functions, for example, binding the There are a lot of the menus, a lot of the pre-recorded or synthesized music pieces. And also, you can choose a variety of the parameters. So this is a way to choose a parameter using a two-hand and tracking technique, and changing the kind of rhythm or filtering. After this, you will see the more complex application called system dynamics. System dynamics is one of the continuous simulation methodologies, which was invented by Jim Forrester, our MIT professor. And that is good to understand the causalities. This is still music, and system dynamics is coming soon. How many of you play music? Good. How many of you compose music? Oh, not so many. Yeah. If you are happy about the existing musical instruments, maybe musical instruments, digitally augmented one might be good. So these are system dynamics used for the business simulation for supply chain management. That really excites our sponsors. But fundamentally, if you change the inventories, then that also influences all the process of the supply chain. If you really improve the kind of production speed of the certain factory, which may fill up all the stuff in a warehouse, for example, or demands, so a lot of the stuff is related in a very complex way. If you think about ecology as an example, if you double the birth rate in Asia, which may influence on the scarcity of the food, or if you double the number of the factories, which may also contribute to the pollution of the air. I don't know how many of you the Club Rome's prediction of the future of the Earth done 20 years ago, but understanding very complex causality, then predict the futures. This kind of technique is very important. However, this technology is not seldom used because inside the computers. So how to bring this technique to simulate or sync with onto the board meeting is one of the kind of a challenge we are doing. So, in the case of supply chain management, many managers of big semiconductor company actually did the exercise using their example. So it's very different from seeing just canned presentation like this PowerPoint. Here you're just watching. You cannot try out. You cannot tweak the levers. But if you bring the sense table on the board meeting, you can really try out. But this is another example of the chemistry. But so hope you see a variety of the possibilities using these new infrastructures for the educations. So I already showed the audio part, but this is a new way to perform electronic music. And we're very much interested to combine the expressive power of traditional musical instrument with the modalities of the computers. And they also presented this work in a NIME conference, New Interface of Musical Expression in Dublin in this May. And I think musical expression is becoming quite exciting domain because their interactivity and also the artistic expressions. But also system dynamics for supply chain is very important, especially for fundraising. So one of the interesting issues, concrete versus abstract, or specific versus generic. And this is a very important spectrum when you design. You can really give a lot of the information in the physical representation, or maybe give specific more information to the intangible projection of the videos, keeping physical object more abstract, generic, so that you can reuse it. So depending on the variation of the object you have to handle, on how much space you have on the table, you have to originally create. And the landscape designer used 7,000 or 8,000 years in the history to manipulating clay to give a form of the new city or whatever. But topology, geometry is captured using laser scanners, laser rangefinders in real time. Then we applied a variety of the rich computational analytical tools for this clay, then projecting the results back to the clay. Then clay itself is not anymore passive clay, but now it's kind of computational medium, which really reacts to your change of the form by stressing like height or water drainage and shadows and aspect and a variety of stuff. But also there are a lot of interesting side effects. We call the handscape. You see the hand is not casting shadow because any object you bring to the
project I'm going to show you
becomes
is the illuminating clay platform. We wanted a way for this
becomes a part of the landscape,
engineers,
which is computed,
architects,
applying landscape design tools.
able to model
And of course, MIT engineer said, oh, it's a bad. I don't want to
ideas
see
in
hands
physical
captured.
materials.
But the artist said, oh, it's cool,
And be
because
able to
body is
enter
inside of
those
the
directly
digital
into
landscape, blah, blah,
a
blah.
computational environment without
So my
having
point
to
is,
translate
digital technology has
into a
keeps
digital model.
diffusing
So
your body,
interface we have
because
here
body is not pure,
consists of
it's not
a
made of 0 and
ordinary
1.
table
We have to go through all the ceremony
represents
to
model
scan or digitize,
And
then
all those
digital
things
computer
here
can deal with.
are
But they already lose
DEM
the physicality,
model.
your
DEM
body
stands
is.
for
So this is, I believe, one of the
And
first
each of these
medium
colors
which
represent
really removed the
different
barrier
heights of the
between digital computation
If I
and the
move the
physical
cursor
stuff.
to
So
the
we are
center
partially
here,
inspired by Frank Gehry,
have two
who uses all the raw
section
materials,
cuts.
or styrofoam,
And these
or wooden
sections
block,
are
or
built.
paper, or even binocular, grabbing
Numbers that
binocular,
you
put
see
into
are
the model.
indicating the height
The
of the
binocular becomes a real building. How many of you know Frank
the
Gehry?
DEM, we can analyze the model in a number
You
of
got to
other
go to
ways.
library or go to Spain
we
or
want
New
to
York.
look at
Anyway,
the
to see
LDD
his
trend,
work. Also in MIT, yeah,
direction,
we are
and
making.
velocity that water
Oh yeah, oh sorry, okay.
You can simply select that, and now it's
So you see now here this is clearly showing the height. If higher, it's more reddish. But now he changed the mode to the
over the
rain
model.
drainage. When you have a lot of the rains,
Here we
how
have a ridge
water
on the top of the
run
mountain.
down the
And
slope
these lines
is
indicate
this
the
one.
direction of flow.
Lighter
velocity
color means more faster
depending on
speed.
color.
That indicates of the
We
land
wanna look at
erosion.
how
So that's a very significant
insertion in the
problem
landscape
for the landscape
might have
designer.
effects on factors such as shadowing.
This is another
Simply
example
place
of casting
a wooden
shadow.
block.
So, important things,
that shadow.
landscape designer is in some sense artist to
It's
express
possible
the
to
beautiful
combine
form. But also they have to be
more than
they have to be analytical to
analysis.
make sure that that's really work
So,
in
for
the
example,
reward.
here we
It's
have
more like a science or left side of the brain.
and slope
So,
function.
form giving, artistic expression, and computational
And as I
reflection
change the slope
used to be separated.
of the model.
First give a form, scanning, then computer can tell you, oh, that it doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. But here you see the fusion of these two stages of the
You can see how those
design or
changes
form
are
giving,
reflected in
modeling,
real-time
and computation analysis or reflections.
slope.
Hope you get that. That's a very important
The
point for me.
simulation is
It's really changed the flow of the design
direction
thinking.
in which the various parts of the landscape model are facing.
So anyway,
Here,
this is really
this is south
done
facing.
practical too, because all these are so
This will help
practical
to
computer libraries inside of the computers
position
called glass
building
libraries.
structures
But
in the
seldom
landscape.
people use it because they don't have
as
good
to make
interface. Still people
best
like
use of
paper or clay. So this is one of the first systems
This
to
simulation shows the
brought
contour
all this is
of the model.
computational library to the hands of the landscape
again,
designer.
As we change the
But
geometry,
it's also raised another possibility. It's not necessarily
contours
landscape design. You can interpret it in any way, like this is a contour line. But
possible to remove
this
the entire
landscape may represent some cultural or political
And
like,
place
climate
another model
or tension,
using
which is
different
one of the
materials and
suggestions that the
just
Machiko gave in Linz, Austria, Ars Electronica.
The advantage
By the way, this is a
of this kind of
level.
model is
So
that it
cut down the
gives
field is a very
control over
important issue. If you
discrete
remove the
building
soil, you have to use the soil somewhere.
opposed to the clay.
So make sure that all the soil is used. It's very important. In
And
this
again,
case, Lego is more kind of appropriate
since
media.
we're only
But
taking
basically, you can use
geometry
anything. You don't need to tag.
to the
Everything is just
computational
captured
simulation,
about the
any
volume,
material.
and including the body. So you can also raise a hill using the hand. Or you can also see that
We can combine
all the
the
lanes
the wooden
falling
block here.
through your kind of body. So anyway,
It's possible to compare.
this is kind of interesting project because so many lessons we can think about the implication of digital design and the physical design and also the use of the body. And we made a new version called the Sandscape. This time we used the clay, but Ars Electronica Center didn't have enough budget, so we invented a new technology using beads, glass beads, half-translucent glass beads, shining from the bottoms using infrared lights, using camera, then higher here become darker, so that we can estimate the landscape. But the sand has very different tactile feeling. It's much more easy to manipulate and malleable. You can really play sculpting very quickly. So that becomes a kind of interesting stuff. So if you have a chance to go to Linz, please drop by and see the stuff. So hope I could convince you that there are very important direction that changing the outer table workbench in the school or design studios to encourage people represent the idea in a tangible form, manipulating together and discussing together. I really want to empower the process of learning or teaching or decision making using this kind of technology. But also we have to have some kind of fun. So this is a Ping Pong Plus project. How many of you are serious ping pong player? I said serious. Okay. Okay, don't be shy. I'm serious. In ping pong and also research. In Japan, so 卓球の研究は人のまたない。Anyway, so I bought a ping pong table when I went to MIT because I'm very depressed because winter is very harsh and the people are very competitive. And I bought a table using a research budget. So then I faced a problem to justify the use of the research money for buying a ping pong table. So I came up with this project. Let me show. So you can imagine the digital water is covering the surface of waters and the fish is swimming, but you can design any kind of effect. Basically the 4 microphones under the table is picking up the ball hit sound, and based on the timing, it can estimate the ball hit positions. And so it's much more fun than programming on the Windows platform. Programming on the ping pong table is much more fun because you can really experience. But the important point is the kind of how to change the nature of the social interaction from competition to different things. Because goal of ping pong is beat up your opponent by making your opponent make mistake. It's very harsh kind of environment, like an untenured professor in MIT or Stanford or CMU. But I didn't like that kind of atmosphere or beating up others to survive. So that I was interested to change the nature of the competitiveness to the more collaborations, or even you make a mistake, like a ball hits a net, still you can enjoy the water ripple. But also audience can enjoy a lot. And also another important implication is visual attentions. The worst application that my students implemented, even though I asked not to do, is Pac-Man. They're really psyched about Pac-Man, implement Pac-Man. But it's impossible to play Pac-Man. Even playing people is tough. But making the ball hit the Pac-Man is impossible. So they learned a very important lesson that the visual attention of human beings is very sparse. It's a theory of the cognitive science. So that's a good way to justify the playing ping pong or buying table. So this is a kind of a fun project, and we are exhibiting in Linz, but also Kyushu, Kumamoto Prefecture. So I talked about Ping Pong Plus. So now I'd like to talk a final project. In general, people have amazing knowledge about understanding about everyday world, everyday physical objects. So glass bottles are one of the example. So we are very much interested to design in a continuous, seamless way to adding a new digital meaning, but not to make a big jump. So transparency of the interface is one of the key ideas. So we extended the notion of the containers to the digital domain, connecting the digital world or contents, and also using the affordance of the opening and closings as a way to let people access the information. So this is installations we exhibited in Tokyo in 2000. So she's a pianist. And next is the bass guy. Also drums. So next is the bass guy. So it is very simple, like a perfume bottles. Open it, you feel the scent. So we wanted to extend that idea to the digital world, to do the simple stuff in a simple manner. But in the United States, we need to make people more engaged rather than just opening, closing is a bit kind of boring. So for Sigraph 99, we made this piece using techno music. So now we can be more proactive. DJ in the dance club, so we can improvise. You can think about the bars. All the whiskey bottle or wine bottles may have some kind of music or words. This is the original piece which I like most. project started from very personal reasons, which originally I wanted to make a small present to my mothers, and she opened the soy sauce bottle many, many times to cook for me when I was a kid. Open it, she feels the smell of the soy sauce. That's a word she understands. So let me introduce the weather bottles, which contains a weather forecast of Sapporo City, that's my hometown. So it means tomorrow becomes clear day. I didn't want my mom to boot Windows 98 every morning, starting Internet Explorer and click mouse, because that's irrelevant to her life. But she passed away 4 years ago. That's the reason we started this project. So let me summarize. Yes.
To trigger this information, what are you using? Is it the
Weather.com.
say what?
Weather.com. www.weather.com, for example. Then you can get the information. Yes. Important things, I didn't like that interface. I didn't like web. I didn't like computers. If I present something to my mom, so I want to give sense-making conduits. So tangible bits. So basically the idea is very simple, but I believe it's powerful. Giving physical form to digital information to computations so that you can bring the computation much closer to your body or architectural space or social context. Or you can also integrate the industrial design or environmental design or arts into the interface. So directly manipulate with two hands, feeling tactile feedback is very important. It's real. It's really the substance. You really feel. You can believe it. Also important things, collaboration. Many ideas come out from the interactions, but having a representation of information that invite you touch and manipulate and try out makes a big difference. That's the spirit of design studio. But so how to make this kind of collaborative environment is one of the most interesting direction. So this is a kind of short summary. And many modern things, many people, many career people do a lot of the great work, but in a very incremental way, in the mainstream. Of course, Intel is powerful, Microsoft is great, and Dell and all the computer companies do great stuff. So you can use some plugin module of Photoshop so that you can tweak a little bit of the pixels. But as Professor John Myra was so frustrated about many artists doing just this kind of incremental stuff, so he went to more radical. So he invented his own computational painting brush called design by number. So if you're really a person, creative and expressionist, you have to be very unhappy about the existing given tools. Then you have to find a real challenge if you're really creative. And I have also had to put myself into a very kind of extreme situation to survive in an environment like MIT, because GUI is so powerful. But we really wanted to show the different alternative approach. Even though I know TUI cannot replace GUI. GUI is so powerful, so pervasive, ubiquitous, and useful. But I believe we could identify certain area that TUI can make more sense than GUI, or complementing each other. So I think you can use variety of tools, macromedia directors, or Photoshop, or Flash, or whatever, or even web. But ask deep questions. Is this really the medium which really responds to your creativity? Can you really express your ideas using this very limited tools which was invented by somebody else? Aren't you the guy who was supposed to invent new medium of the expression as John Myra is doing? So in the high levels, this is an effort to reconcile our dual citizenship in the world of bits and atoms. And of course, in the art community, people are talking about endlessly about all this high level stuff. But you have to do it. You have to really convince people that you have ideas. And you have to also let people experience through the interactions. So talking using English words or any language is fine. But you have to really design. You have to really create. You have to really change the way people think about it. I believe that is the interaction design. And to the interaction design, you have to stop being just designer or artist, because you have to understand the science, like a human-computer interface, or cognitive science, or human factors. Also, you have to materialize your ideas in a compelling, usable way, so that you have to speak hardcore language of computer science, electronic engineering, mechanical engineering, If you don't speak, it's like studying in UCLA without speaking English. You cannot survive. Also, you have to shape your idea or polish your ideas using variable discipline. Industrial design is great. But also media arts is great because they ask very deep questions in a historical or social context, which engineers often never dream. That's really enjoy because also Eric and Machiko gave a lot of great insight about my work. I designed this work for a certain purpose. They have but very different interpretation because they have very different perspective. That's really opened my eyes or widened my understanding about what I'm doing, what I should do. Also, practical real-world application is very important. And finding the real sponsors in the industry, applying your idea to the real-world problems is also great lessons. If idea is strong. If idea is not strong, no way to apply to real-world problem solving. You cannot make any impact. So, in terms of discipline, I think it's great. Design is now extended design and the media and the art. But also it's not enough. If you really want to make some creation of the medium to empower people to think with, collaborate, express, you have to really cover virtually everything. But I'm none of the expert of any disciplines, but you have to make a really great collaborative teams, and you have to really have a strong respect or some fundamental understanding about other disciplines. So I believe studying at the UCLA is a great opportunity. Not you can study very deeply about history of graphics design, but you can really go to the other department and learn a different perspective. And also important thing is to identify the real problem to apply this kind of the concept. So what's the design? Many people ask. This is a question I started asking in ICSID conference in Seoul in 2000, where many people like Bill Morgridge and all the folks came. But for me, maybe eyeglass is the most kind of interesting metaphors. When people came to the SIGGRAPH installation, including Machiko and Reiki and a bunch of the friends, I made a lot of friends through the SIGGRAPH. They opened it, they said, oh wow. But they came back again and again with their friends, talking their own story about content or context these bottles can be implemented. Saying, how about putting the chanson of somebody into this wine bottles, then present to my grandma, for example, in a present. Or putting this poem to this perfume bottle and present to you, then do you manage me or repair the broken relationship? Anyway, there are a lot of interesting possibilities. Also, you can open the bar or restaurant, then you can make all the bottles, have all the music or the stories so that you can make a lot of the fun. Rather than getting drunk, you can buy a glass of the poem instead of a glass of wine to your friend. So, firing up, stimulating imagination of peoples is very important. And you cannot see the glass bottles as they used to be once you open it. I think that's the power of the design or creation, whatever you call. And the active site, very important word, also Mark Weiser. How many of you have the term ubiquitous computing? Great. Ubiquitous computing is a buzzword. It's a wonderful word for the industry to sell more gadgets. Because one interpretation is, long ago, many people shared one computers. 80s, people started to have their own computers. But now, you have to buy many computers. That's wonderful. But that's chaos. It doesn't really bring the peace of the mind. Entropy skyrockets because they don't have an understanding about interwork, interpret, seamless interface, or situativeness. So he regretted, before he passed away, the name of ubiquitous computing. He knew it, and I knew it. Ubiquity is not the real point. But his real point of the message is how to make interface transparent. The most profound technology are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. That's the real message. Whether computer is many or centralized or distributed are not the real point. But many people mistook. It's like a message of Douglas Engelbart was mistaken by many people, including Alan Kay. So it delays all the kind of the computational stuff. But you really need to read these papers again and think about, if you are interesting about these directions. So I made this slide in April. I don't know if this is appropriate, but this is United States, so I hope it's okay. So it's highly interdisciplinary. That's great. But interdisciplinary is not enough. By saying interdisciplinary, it's like multimedia. Multimedia means voice, image or text, still each media is identifiable or distinguishable. So you can count how many media. You said, I'm a designer, and you're the artist, you're the engineer, we're working together, we are interdisciplinary. It's not really true interdisciplinary. Interdisciplinary means you should really forget about who you are, and you have to speak all the language. You have to be the all. So you should really experience identity crisis to solve the real problems. You can solve the problem by just your skill of the Photoshop or Flash media. Something's wrong. Maybe you're doing not real stuff. And also appreciate diversity. That's another challenge. So new vision, no roadmap. Of course, you can become an expert, a guru of certain tools. But who cares? That's not really creation, invention. You have to invent a new paradigm. You have to ask really deep questions, which nobody ever asked. Asking the really right questions is more important than solving the problem, which already know. Let's make it more smaller or beautiful. It's fine. That's nothing really new as a question. So identify the new question or problems. Don't do incremental work if you're truly creative. If you're not creative, do incremental stuff, because this society still needs people to fix a plumbing or a chair or a battery or whatever. That's fine. So grant to the us, but also your stuff shouldn't be too abstract or too kind of crazy. It has to be understood by somebody. Otherwise, you cannot make any impact, influence. So learn through the real world problem solving is good. Solve the real profound problem. Could be education or whatever. And you may have your own philosophy, but if nobody understands, you don't exist in the society. And your tuition stipend must be covered by California government, who has a very financial problem. But you have to return what you learn to the society. To do so, you have to think about distance. Also, this success is danger. This is often Nicholas Norton said. If you succeed, it's very dangerous. Even people stop doing more radical stuff, you just feel comfortable by small success. Then you get stuck. You always need to keep challenging to yourself and asking what's a real deeper challenge. And so you have to keep redefining yourself. And if you succeed, you're really in the dangers. So don't forget. So I'd like to acknowledge to the really great students. These are really great hackers. But they're so really hungry to apply their technique, or idea, or skill to the really meaningful, profound stuff to make some change. And life is very short. And you have to really think about how to use your time and energy. But these students are so great. Once they really get excited and resonate, they forget to eat or sleep. They don't think about what is working hours. So they stay up late eating cold pizzas and bring the working prototype next morning. This speed is so important and also the critical if you're the inventor or creators. The stuff. I talked, many of them, InTouch, Caribot, Ping-Pong Plus, music bottles, also new Soundscape and app are running in Linz, Austria, Ars Electronica centers. Not as a pure art, but to make people think about new relation of interaction between digital, physical, and the body. So you have a chance to go to Linz. Please try it. It's running until next August. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
So, Ishii-san, thank you very much for this wonderful talk, which I'm sure gave you many ideas, and also I'm very grateful for the moment you took on the plane actually to prepare this additional slide, which I hope that all of you will keep in your mind. So now we would actually have a few moments for some questions for Ishii-san. If there's something, I will be handing you the microphone because we are streaming these things, so we will have everything on record. So please, you are the first.
This isn't really a question, but I noticed in your lecture that you like pictures of the beach.
A beach, yes.
Yeah, where the water touches the sand.
Yes.
Have you ever been to the Tijuana border down south?
Pardon?
The border down south where Mexico touches the United States?
I haven't been there.
I think that if you get a chance, if you can go online or whatever, I would look, if you like those images, there's sort of an image, because the border ascends into the ocean, which is sort of a funny picture, and I thought maybe you might enjoy it.
Great.
Yeah.
Can you send me by JPEG attachment?
Yeah,
with the email?
I don't have your. I'm being
Yeah.
it from Michiko.
Border or edge or
Yeah.
boundary is such a kind of rich area, not only physical or digital physical, but also political or economical or cultural stuff. So it seems to be really kind of rich areas, also biologically. So I'm really like this kind of a metaphor, but I'd like to see the picture and I can think that, yeah. You can ask questions any language, English, Japanese, Java, C++.
Yes, okay, so any other questions? I think you were the first one, and then it's up to you.
Hi, Professor Ishii. I was wondering what your thoughts are on some of the recent real-world products that seem to be drawing a lot on your work. There's a few examples, but the most familiar right now might be what Nintendo's doing with Animal Crossing and the e-reader cards.
So I couldn't.
The question is, what do you think of some of the work that's being done with real-world products, real-world things that are starting to come out that look to me to be really drawing on your work, especially what Nintendo's doing right now?
Nintendo?
Nintendo.
Also, I'm not familiar with.
You don't know?
Sorry.
We'll talk later then.
Okay. Okay.
There's some other examples,
But I mean, how do you basically feel this idea if he sees that, I mean, that a lot of companies or makers are now creating products which seem to be directly being kind of lifted somehow from these ideas that you have been developing in your group. So
I didn't know that.
How do you feel about this? I mean, let's say that this is happening. How do you?
Or if I made an influence in a positive way, then their products also make a good influence on society. That's great. But also there might be all the pitfall or dangers and misinterpretation. So we'd like to see, carefully.
So
it sounds like everybody knows, except for me.
Can you explain us this? What is the Nintendo application?
Well, there's two things going on right now with what Nintendo's doing. One, if you're playing the game Animal Crossing, there's something where you have this little town you live in, and it's stored on a memory card. And it's very interesting that they've a little memory card that goes in the game, but it's very interesting that they've made that memory card into essentially a Ficon for that town.
Oh, I see.
Because if I want to visit another town, I put the town I'm visiting into the second slot, or I can trade my town to you by giving you that card. It becomes very much that the object represents.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
The second thing is they have an add-on that, of course, you have to buy the GameCube to Game Boy adapter, the Game Boy, and the e-reader. But if you have all these things, you can buy little cards that are basically like trading cards, but they have a high-density two-dimensional barcode on them. And from that barcode, that can then unlock objects in the game. So those cards become Ficons again. I can trade them with my friends. I can physically manipulate them. It's very close to your work. It seems very drawn.
I think conceptually it's very kind of close. I think that also reminds me of the memory stick that Sony is promoting. And I had a great conversation in Comdeck 2000 with Mr. Longuchi. He's developing memory stick. And I was very interested because memory stick is so tangible and so clear that I sucked stuff, then inserted, for example. It's I see. So tangible representation, having in your hands, really give a kind of a much more sense of the existence. But what Mr. Longuich told me is communication is offline. That's a very powerful statement because everybody believes communication got online. You have to have the wireless or wired network, URL. But his point is communication got to be done offline means giving a physical object from hand to hand of the people is important in the context of home. That also creates opportunity to talking each other's. And also much more cognitively kind of nice. So I think what you mentioned about physical representation, even inside of the digital stuff or just pointers, having some physical substance seems to have very significant meaning in a social context, like a memory stick and also exchange the game card. So I think we should really focus about boundary rather than throwing everything into the pure digitals, which only manipulated by the plastic mass. So thanks for the great example.
Okay, so you have the next, and then it's you.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is a question about the five senses.
Oh, yeah.
Today we imagine that we have five senses, but that's not always been the case. And in my research I found, for example, that in medieval Europe, people believed in a different set of senses that was to do with spirituality, like being able to sense the voice of God, that kind of thing. Do you think that in this work we are developing new senses in that same kind of way?
I have a scientific background, so I'm not maybe qualified to talk about the 6 or 7 stuff, but certainly starting with Ouija stuff, use of the Ouija board, also in touch, for example, or silent. Certainly, I start thinking about kind of the force which is moving this kind of object. Of course, we are computationally moving. That really inspires about that thinking. And because I lost my mom in 1998, I really want to talk to her. So if there's any medium I can let her communicate with me, even using this kind of actual workbench, maybe all of a sudden it stopped working, but it's controlled by somebody who nobody knows. I might be very excited. Yeah, but I have to think about it. Also in the 5 senses, of course, the smell is one of the very interesting sense because that evokes all the memory. Many great memory is just sleeping in the brain cells. There's no chance to be retrieved. But some certain cue of the smells really triggered. So that could be another interesting domain. Also, the technology like a silicon nose and also synthesizing artificial smell is kind of come to the real kind of the usable stage. So there might be some interesting stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I was wondering if you've incorporated any of those the sense table, maybe it was, with educational programs where they've been implemented in schools or any educational, experimental groups.
Yes. We did simple chemistry, for example, synthesizing chemical materials, but now we started thinking about physics, teaching a simple physics, Newton physics. For example, like gears or pulley or pendulum, for example. There's a lot of the theory behind that. But actually using tangible kind of simulations, which is digitally augmented, I do believe that gives a much better sense to understand. Also movement of like Earth around the sun. Many people don't have understanding about why seasons are there because they do not understand or tilting of the axis of the Earth. So there might be a lot of the way to teach basic science, physical science, or astronomy, or maybe geology using a sandscape or land illuminating clay. So we are very much interested to start some serious exploration of using this stuff in the school.
Will it be affordable?
Pardon?
Will it be affordable? Economically feasible.
Okay.
Affordable.
Important thing is there are several levels. Everything, if you invent something fast, it's extremely expensive because only one of a kind. It's very fragile. But if you really convince the people who are manufacturing in the bulk, then it becomes cheaper. Then if market really skyrockets, become even cheaper. So sense table, no, it's very expensive, and I have to really work hard to raise a fund to make another copies. But the Steelcase is a sponsor making 60% of the office furniture. So I try to convince them to print the antenna wires, adding a bit of the cost, but every table. So this is another example. If you rent an apartment in Los Angeles, all the apartments come with water, electricity, or even high-speed internet connections. But 300 years ago, maybe nothing came with, because somebody worked very hard and convinced, then become infrastructure. So as a research institute, I think our role is to invent new stuff, convince that how it can really empower people, then convince the manufacturer or people who have the money or power to make more usable. So I'd like to go through all this steep kind of the slope from now on. So, but I hope if somebody can collaborate, and so that we can convince the key players much more quicker, would be one of the interesting paths. Yeah.
Okay, so I think you're the next. My question, I think, is related a little bit. Your applications are amazing, but very domain specific. Is there research to develop authoring tools or a way of allowing people to author for these kind of tangible environments, the same way that Macromedia Director may allow artists to author screen-based or interactive environments now?
That's very good questions. First of all, we have to be domain specific. It's kind of strategy because GUI is so general because pixel can mean anything and the mouse can click anything or interpret anything. So we try to start to identify the domain in which to really make sense based on the continuity of the existing work practice or physical representations. But also we really want to go to the authoring. But authoring is a domain that the GUI is so good, like a word processing, a spreadsheet, or like video editing. We can apply some of the TUI, but TUI cannot cover entire fine-grained manipulation. So maybe I should think about carefully about granularity of the building block. Using a triangles, actually we can let people construct certain stuff, but it cannot allow people to do the very finite, kind of a precise control. So we really want to find, in which levels we should provide triangles for kids playing. But to completely change the behavior of the triangles, maybe still somebody have to write a code. So should we change programming to using TUI? That's open questions, but it's very difficult. So we're still focusing about more tangible geometric application for the moment. But if you have ideas, tell us, and let's make it happen.
Thank you.
I can take many questions, so unless you guys are not too hungry.
Thank you for showing us a very interesting research.
Thanks for staying.
Actually, I applied to your research last year, and I was rejected for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, you applied?
Yeah.
What's the TOEFL score?
What?
No.
I just want to know your next step. I mean, you're trying to mediate physical object with intangible information or ambient. And there are lots of things around us. They're not only physical icon or whatever on the table. What I want to know your next step to just go out of the bottle.
So next step.
Your research is very interesting.
Okay,
But,
maybe there's three directions. One is I really want to make a significant impact in a class or design studios to make people think. So basically, I really want to think about the new way of the thinking, which we call tangible thinking. Many of you know the visual thinking, I believe. You guys sketch every day. So visual thinking is obviously a very powerful way to do holistic, spatial, metaphorical thinking. But the Frank Gehry and many architects, landscape designer, really use physical object. Even it's very abstract, putting together, then they can think, oh, this building is beautiful, blah, blah, blah. So there's a certain way to use physical object also for very abstract thinking. You see the supply chain management briefly. If I change my inventories, then your stuff become blah, blah, blah. After doing this exercise, we went to the lunch. All of a sudden, coffee cup becomes my inventories or inventory. They start continuing the discussion, computing, using a brain without any video projection. But before doing exercise with our system, they never thought about the coffee cup anything to do with inventory or pollution of the air, for example. So mapping some very abstract computational stuff into the physical object, then manipulating this stuff. So it's a very important, powerful way. And it shouldn't be only the technique Frank Gehry can use it, but all the people or kids should be able to use it. So that's one direction. Second, theory. I really want to develop more rigorous theory or design principles based on the scientific stuff, because I'm still in academia. And third, I'm a bit tired of doing tangible user interface because I already did 7 years. So maybe it's a good time to change completely different directions. And I also thinking about maybe I'm doing archaeological astronomy is one of the directions I'm very much interested in. It's very different from this stuff, but maybe 7 years is good enough to do the certain stuff. So please keep watching us, and in 3 years you will see the new directions coming out.
So do we have any other?
Hi, I just have a kind of a simple question. I was just curious where the music comes from and the musical bottles.
Oh, music is inside of the, of course, inside of the bottles. So musician, invisible, but open it, they awake and they start playing piano.
Is there like a speaker or something in somewhere?
Of course,
Yeah,
of course.
I mean, like,
Technology. There's
what-
stupid computers and the stupid speakers is vibrating. Yeah, the airs, and that's the reason. Basically, I think you're talking about technology. There's under the table, there's an antenna coil.
Okay, so the table's like, yeah.
Table antenna coil generating 30 to 300 kilohertz electromagnetic field, and each bottle has an LC tag in the neck, coil and a small capacitor which has a unique resonance frequency, and the stopper has a ferrite inside. Sticking the ferrite inside of the coil that increases the inductance so that the resonance frequency is lowered. And the circuit was designed by Professor Joe Paradiso. He's a guru of the sensing technology. So that's the mechanism. If you really want to study more, I have an oscilloscope in my laboratory, so you can come and hack.
Okay, thanks.
And I think, yeah.
Yeah, I had a small comment about your architectural work.
Yes.
My background is in architecture. And
Good. You're an architect.
Yes.
You gotta teach me what's wrong. How I can do better.
Like I studied architecture in a very traditional, we made models. We did not use computers that much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a great liberation in one way about 10 years ago when architects started using the computer. And one of the kind of symptoms or one of the kind of really interesting things about that was the infinite zoomability that you could get with a software program. So you could look at 1 inch of your building and you could look at it from outer space, So that was one of the things that in many ways liberated us from the process of physical building. And a lot of us have grown to appreciate that process. And in some way, the model metaphor of your work kind of brings us back to a physical thing which we've in some ways forgotten. I mean, personally speaking.
Yes, you're right.
So there's like this, the power of being able to zoom in to the doorknob and being able to zoom out to the city was not possible through a physical model. And so we've learned to design now in ways that, that like architectural work now is being done where from the smallest element to the largest, the same software is used, for example, and so that was just a comment. So my question is, are you interested in the development of materials that would
developing what?
Of materials that would, for example, provide a kind of feedback. For example, your topographical. Are you interested in materials that would respond? That would that would complete the loop?
In 1 year. In 1 year, I will show you.
Okay.
That's right. I think his comment is very important because digital has amazing malleability. You can do amazing kind of navigation or kind of fly through, for example, in the buildings. And unfortunately, physical stuff is so rigid and consume a lot of time to make. But one exercise we did in real design studio is using a vertical screen to complement the come on. So in this design studios, also we put a very big vertical wall projecting the image. Then we use a small tiny camera. So if I want to see the specific view, we can put tiny camera. Then image can be projected in a large. But you can see the reference model so that you can really understand where. But it doesn't really meet your expectation of high resolution digital, for example, stuff. So we are now thinking about putting a position tracking system to this camera. The computer can also render, because computer has all the knowledge of this landscape. So computer can also render, then superimpose onto the video image projecting onto the vertical wall. So that moving a physical digital camera, we can also explore certain kind of the details. You know what I mean? So there's a certain way to kind of solve these problems. But also we are very aware about the limitation of the physical, but also the beauty of the physicality. So question is how to really hit the right balance, how to prevent people from going too extreme, then losing the most important stuff is one of the kind of challenge. But I'd like to show the next versions if you have a chance to come to MIT.
So, unfortunately, maybe the one last question, if somebody has something your mind. Otherwise, yes. Anyway, so there are no other questions. So I would just like to thank you, Professor Ishii, once again.
Thank you very much for staying till so late. I know you guys are hungry. Now it's.
And also, I hope that you wrote down the address of the website, so the Tangible Media Group, which
yes, a little bit,
which contains a lot of information, additional information, which you can study and learn more about the project that Professor Ishii and his many collaborators in the group have been developing. And so we will continue this lecture series in 2 weeks' time with Ardurinsky, who's actually is a usual graduate originally speaking about Japanese media from his long experience. So I would like to welcome you back in 2 weeks' time here in this auditorium. Thank you. And maybe another comment, yeah?
Just one short comment, because this is the first one of this series. I'd like to thank you very much for all the support and some help from the graduate students. Michael Chan, who designed a gorgeous poster. You should stand up. He designed the poster.
Thank you very much.
Dolores Rivera, who designed the poster for Ishii's lecture. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. This hand one. Thank you. Thank you.
And also for the students of my class from Friday, please make sure that you picked up the information from Grace.
Okay. Sorry? Do you have some material?
Yes, I brought some materials. You have a specific interest.
Okay.
Yes, you can come. Also, I have a business card, so you can.
Yes.
We can exchange the card. Yes.
Can you give one?
Sure.
Two of these.
Sure. Take some of them. Yeah.
I'll take 100.
Yeah.
I'll take the mic.
Pardon? Oh, yeah, microphone. Yeah, I got to pick off some microphone.
I just wanted to say hello.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
If there are any people from other institutions who want to bring the poster to hang on the wall, not to store, here are some.
How's your teaching going?
How's it going? I'm not teaching right now.
Oh, really?
I took a leave.
Yes. どうぞ。iPhone Japan? 日本です。今は。
I'll email you that picture.
Oh, thank you very much. PhD ですか ?PhD のコースですか
いや、自分ですまだアンダーで。
あ、名刺あります？
いや、ない。
あ、残念。皆さん名刺、E メール送ってください。もし感想あったら。ね、そのなんかハンドブックね、フランスのなんか。Thank you very much for asking the really great questions. Maybe I gave a long, strange answer.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm working in the area of writing and writing
Oh, really?
about virtuality.
Oh,
so
virtual.
I'm very interested
Yes.
in this space that you're talking about.
I see. I see.
So I'll go and have a look at the website.
Yeah, please. And sure. Yeah, it's so nice to see you again. I met a lot of the great people in Linz.
Yeah, me too.
And it's kind of strange.
I couldn't go this year though, did you?
Oh yeah, I installed a new soundscape over there. Would you like? Yeah.
前回 CSCW でフィラデルフィアでもともと石田県の学生です。
ああ、今何？ここにいるの？
ええ、ここのビジネススクールの博士課程で。
あ、懐かしい。お名前何としましたっけ？
山内です。
あ、懐かしい。あ、本当に。
その前にミュンヘンで。
ミュンヘンでそう文房具やったんでね。あ、懐かしい。なんだ MIT 来ればよかったのに。楽しい？
ええ。
はい。Would you like to?
Sure, it's awesome.
Thank you very much for staying. Yeah, it's great having so many folks hanging out. Thank you very much for.
Yeah, do you remember me? Stephanie
Yeah.
Myers, I used to be with Nokia. That's where you know me from SIGGRAPH.
It's kind of strange. I know so many. Why you ended up here?
Nokia moved me here for a project.
Yes.
And now I'm